Welcome back to the Goalie Corner presented by Stop Goaltending. I'm your host, Michael Hales, and today we have Patrick Killeen on with us. Patrick played, I should have this written down. How many years did you play overall in the East Coast and Italy?
I played 7 years professional. So yeah, 3 years in North America and then another 4 years over in Europe.
Right. And you just recently started your coaching journey, so we'll get into that.
Yep.
But first off, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on. We met each other at the Hockey Canada goalie coaching seminar June, right?
Yeah.
I think that was June.
So.
And stayed in touch rather decently. But again, welcome, and why don't you give us a little bit of brief description on who you are and your hockey career journey?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to be a part of this. It's been a while since I've done any media stuff, so it's fun, and I like what you're doing. I think it's great to kind of get this stuff out there for goalies. It's such an overlooked position in a lot of ways, and my outlook on it is if you can give people any advice to kind of help out, not just with the on ice stuff, but the off ice stuff too, and kind of all the transitions that come with it from going from junior to pro or pro into retirement, and all that stuff is nuanced to say the least. So I'm happy to be here and talk a bit about it. I'm from the Ottawa area, so I grew up in a small little town, played competitive AA hockey growing up, which is the same as AAA now. Played 4 years in the OHL for the Brampton Battalion. Was lucky enough to be drafted in 2008 by the Pittsburgh Penguins and signed my first pro contract with them in 2010. Played 3 years pro up and down in the East Coast in the American League, Wheeling and Wilkes-Barre. Ended up going to school after that at Carleton University, got a degree in criminology, and then moved over to Europe, did 2 years in Italy and 2 years in the UK. And then COVID happened and kind of went into a nice early retirement, and then transitioned into the real world, so to speak. So now I've just been, working a regular day job, and just recently got back into coaching, and now running my own small goalie school, Patrick Killeen Goaltending, out of the Ottawa Valley, and just kind of getting used to all the fun stuff that has to offer.
Fun indeed. Is it a little different in the sense you hear about people WHL, OHL, and the Q, right? Like they don't have access to the NCAA.
Yeah.
But is it when you actually get past the entry level contracts, is it pretty normal that guys, they understand that they might not be able to make a push to the next level and they go back to their schooling?
I think you're seeing it more and more. Like when I played, it's kind of unfortunate because they changed the rule right after, which would have been nice, but I essentially lost a year of eligibility for every year pro that I played. So I guess you start with 5, and then when I played 3 years pro, I ended up with 2 years eligibility left. And I also had to sit out a full year from my last pro game. So when I went to Carleton, 2013 or 2014, I had to sit a full year out where I was just basically a full-time student. We had 3 goalies on the team. I was the 4th goalie. So I would get out maybe Tuesday, Thursday mornings with the goalie coach type thing, and then kind of transition back into playing the year after was really fun for sure, but it was kind of interesting. But I tried to make the most of it. Like I always looked at it like I was going to play pro hockey after. That was my goal. I just wanted to take care of myself and have a plan to kind of go back on when, eventually you're not playing anymore. So my push was either American League or East Coast or go over to Europe. And I knew there was things that I could have done better. I was really happy with my 3 years pro before I went to school, don't get me wrong, but as far as my development, there was things that I needed to work on as a goalie to get better. And that allowed me the opportunity to, especially the first year when I wasn't playing games, to really break things down and revamp the way I played. I was not a very technical goalie. I played very just feel style. I wasn't opposed to stacking the pads and poke checking and doing all that stuff. I just went out and battled. But the technical stuff was lacking. And that year was spent exclusively on relearning the game. So it served me really well. I was a significantly better goalie leaving school than I was going into it. And I was really lucky to have the goalie coaches I had. I had Tom Dempsey and Mark Havlin, like two guys that were two of the best goalie coaches I worked with. And I was able to work with them every day. So I was always told the first contract is hard, but the second contract's harder. And that was the case for me. It bottlenecks. You're not just competing with the same people you were competing against before, but you're dealing with a whole new group of goalies coming out of junior, coming out of college that all want to play pro. And, when teams are looking at you like, well, you were good, but not quite good enough to get in the NHL in those 3 years. But maybe this 19-year-old coming out of junior is, right? So that second contract's the hardest one to get, far and away. And I think you see a lot of guys kind of use that as the opportunity to jump back to school, maybe get a degree, and then kind of move forward from there, right? So I was happy with it. I really don't regret my decision at all. I think it was one of the best decisions I ever made, actually, in hockey, was to go to school at that time, and I was close to not doing it. So I'm really happy I did, but it worked out well for me.
I'm sure it was if you were reliving that time, it was an interesting mentality, because you're almost forced to walk away for a year, right? And just do the practices and the technical side and become a normal person, we could say.
Yeah.
Right. And then, or you can try to grind it out and find a contract somewhere in the East Coast.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And not be attached to the NHL team.
Yeah. And the thing I was trying to avoid, and again, I'm happy it worked out the way it did, because I had a contract over in Kazakhstan that I was really considering, and I'm happy I didn't. As much as a cool of an experience as that would have been, I'm happy I made the right call and went to school. But yeah, like, you're just trying to work through so much through those first couple years pro. You're learning so much. Like, I was 19 years old my first year pro, and wasn't old enough to get a beer when down in the States, right? And there's a lot to learn. You think you know it all when you're 19, 20, but you really don't, obviously. And it was really nice to go to school and spend that first year, just like you said, like just a student. I was just going to class. I wasn't associated with anything, and I really enjoyed being a student. And there were times where it crossed my mind, like, maybe this is it. Maybe I don't play here next year. Maybe I just get my degree and I just kind of move on with life. That only lasted for maybe a month or two before I really missed what you get from being a goalie specifically. And eventually that's where I kind of put my sights on. I was like, okay, no, I'm going to play pro again. I'm going to work my butt off, and I'm going to make that happen. But it's certainly it's not always an easy journey. As soon as it becomes a job, it's a job, and you're dedicating a lot of time into being the best you can be on and off the ice, but there's always someone there chasing you down. And I really just didn't want to fall into the situation where I was, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I didn't want to play till I was 35 in the East Coast and then end up trying to find a job without a degree, right? And I had to know who I was as a person. There's a lot of people out there, and I've played with a lot of them, that land on their feet because they're just extroverted people and they're just gonna be successful, right? I'm a very quiet, introverted person. I wasn't gonna land in a sales job or anything like that. I needed to figure something else out. So that degree was something that helped me progress on and off the ice. And now I can, at least have gainful employment now that the hockey career's done.
It's kind of funny to see, like, when you go, the difference between like junior hockey. I came out of college when I went pro, but the junior hockey lifestyle from the WHL to OHL to pro, or even college to pro. Like, yeah. I remember walking in, and the only thing guys were talking about were when's the paycheck coming, and when can we leave the rink? And I was sitting there like, don't you guys like love this? Like, let's enjoy it. Like, this is exciting. They're like, yeah, no, just do your job and go home, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's what I mean about it turning into a job at that point, right? Is like, junior is still very much, you get a taste of it where you become an asset.
Meat almost.
Yeah, you're an asset at that point. You can be replaced, but I mean, they're in it to make money for sure, right? Like there's no doubt that when you're playing junior hockey and you're playing in front of 4,000 or 10,000 people wherever you are, that organization is trying to put the best possible product on the ice. And if you're not part of that equation, then they will find someone who is, of course. Pro is like that, but magnified significantly, especially
Yeah.
the higher levels you play. And I know I always talk to goalies about how, like, when you're playing minor hockey, most guys were probably the best in their area or the best in their team or whatever. When you go to junior, that's how everyone was, right? They were all the best in their area or the best in their teams. And you're competing now against every goalie in Ontario in the last 4 years, right? Between 16 and 20. Well, now when you go play pro, you're competing against essentially every goalie in the world between the ages of 20 and 35, if they can still play. That is a big group of people for not a lot of spots. And that's just the reality of goaltending, is there just isn't a lot of spots. So that's always difficult, of course, is like, there's no respite from that. Like, even my first year pro, I beat 6 people out of the starting job just to have the 7th guy eventually take it later. You know, it's the second you get complacent, there's someone there biting at your heels. And that's just the reality of it. There's nothing you can really do about it, but put your best product on the ice and try not to worry too much about it, and enjoy it while you got it. You know, work hard and have fun. And if you're looking at it negative all the time, it's going to impact your play and it's going to be counterproductive. So you just got to find a way to enjoy it, find a way to lean into it, understand the reality of it, and put your product on the ice.
Absolutely. When you were playing the East Coast and overseas, I was never like this, but did you have the mindfulness to like zoom out and appreciate what you've accomplished in the moment? Or were you always kind of like, what's next?
It's a good question. I had a huge shift in the way I approached the game. That's why, like I mentioned earlier, like those 3 years that I spent at Carleton, even with the 1 year not playing, were so good for me on and off the ice. I completely shifted my outlook on the way I approached the game. And those first 3 years when I was under contract with Pittsburgh, playing in the East Coast, playing in the American League, I enjoyed it big picture. Sure, I don't have any regrets about it, but it's difficult. And I had a lot of times where I let that negativity bring me down into the ditch with it, right? Where it was hard to enjoy moment to moment. It was hard when your identity is a good goalie. What happens when you're no longer a good goalie at times? And that's the way it's going to be as a goalie. You're not always going to be great, and you're going to go through rough patches. And the East Coast Hockey League is a fun league to play in, but it's a difficult league to play in, just for the fact that that's just the way it is, right? So when I went to school, I completely shifted my outlook on it. I said, if I am lucky enough to have the opportunity to play pro hockey again, I'm going to really take advantage of every moment that I'm there, able to do it. And that's more or less what I was able to do for those 4 years. Be more objective about it, put the work in on the ice, put the work in off the ice. But yeah, like lean into those days off where you can enjoy and go hiking in the mountains or go have a coffee on a patio in the Italian Alps or whatever. You know, like, I really am grateful that I was able to look at things a little more objectively and have more fun on the ice. And, you know, I do wish I would have learned that earlier, but that's probably one of the reasons I got into coaching too, right? Is I can kind of bring that to light a little bit with these guys, because you got to enjoy it, you know?
Yeah. How did you end up going from Carleton to, I can't think of the place called Ritten?
Yeah.
In the Alps League?
Yeah. Written.
Way north Italy, if anybody's looking at a map right now.
The very tip of the north. Yeah, like I spent all summer with one of those apps trying to learn Italian, just to find out that I got there and no one on my team spoke Italian. They all spoke German. So it didn't do me much good. And German's a great language, not the easiest one to learn though, especially coming out from the Ottawa Valley. So I ended up there. Like I said, I knew I wanted to play pro at that point, and Europe was a great option because, I mean, it's a more lifestyle for what I was looking for at the time. And I think it's a little easier to make a living with consistency, right? Like if you're going to the East Coast, you're accepting the fact that you're probably going to deal with some transfers or trades throughout the year. You're going to deal with getting called up, sent down. All those things are great, but for what I was looking for, I just wanted to go play pro hockey, enjoy it, make a living out of it, play good hockey every day, meet some new people, and have some new life experience. And I was really lucky with Carleton. We had a subsidized trip by the school to Europe. So we paid a little, but the school paid the majority of it. And we flew over and played 3 exhibition games. We were in Garmisch in Germany. And we played Ritten, so the same team that I ended up signing with. And then we played Kitzbühel in Austria. So we played 3 games over the course of 10 days. I ended up getting the start against Ritten, and they had a really good team. They ended up winning the championship that year. I think it was funny that I ended up playing there because the guys talked to me about it after. They thought it was a friendly. They showed up a little hungover, relaxed, just ready to play a game. There wasn't many fans or anything. It was just like a, whatever you want to call it, a friendly match. And we showed up ready to win. Like, we took the best player out of the game in the first 5 minutes with this massive open ice hit. And then they were kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing it this way. And they were a really good team. We ended up winning 2-1 and or maybe 3-2. But I played quite well. I was happy with how I played. And sure enough, the season ended. We went to nationals that year with Carleton, and a couple of weeks later, I got a call from their GM, and yeah, the rest is history. I ended up signing there a couple of weeks later and going through the whole process, and that's where I ended up. And then 2 years there too. It was a great spot.
What was the game style like, or the difference between North American hockey and going to Italy?
It's that league was interesting. Like, it was the first year where they did it, where they combined Italy with the second league in Austria. So it was the top league in Italy combined with the second league in Austria and a couple teams from Slovenia. They brought in 4 imports for each team. So with only 4 imports, they were pretty high quality. And the way that at least the leagues that I played in, it seemed like it was almost a 2-tiered league, in the sense that the top 4 or 5 teams were really, really good with some excellent imports. And then the bottom teams, there just wasn't as much depth with the Italian players. They'd still get some great imports for sure, but not every game was as challenging. It was different going to play one team. It could be an absolute, barn burner of incredible hockey. And then the next night you could win, 9-1 and outshoot them 55-7. So I really enjoyed that league. I thought it was really well run. The hockey was good. It was fast, very fast. What was really surprised me was the amount of depth that Italy did offer. Like, the players that they had that were good were really, really good, which was
surprising.
Great. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, like it's so close to Austria that there is a lot of culture shared between that. Like, they're their own thing, like Südtirol, and it's a little province up there, so they're not really Italian in that sense. But the amount of people that played hockey was fairly small, but their development was really cool. Like, they brought them in at a young age, and equipment was provided, and kind of the pro team would run the junior programs as well. So all the way down. So you'd start as a young age as in the junior program, and you'd get up and then play junior, eventually 15, 16. And hopefully they're developing you to eventually play on the pro team. But the guys that were there were really, really good. The imports were good. I was lucky enough to win the championship that year, which was one of the best memories I had over there. But yeah, a little bit faster, a little less contact, a little less fighting, but it was certainly quite gritty still, and highly skilled. And no, it was lots of fun to play there.
Are they on Olympic-sized ice?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, they were on big ice, and they had some guys that could fly. And that was an adjustment as a goalie, like angles, right? And just the amount of available space that they had. There was a lot more rushes, because a lot of more breakdowns with that bigger ice. A lot more like east-west plays, and it was just harder to smother guys as a defenseman. So you'd see, like, instead of that gap control, more likely they were going to get that shot off at the top of the circle, where in the East Coast it was going to be stick on puck, or in at goals. So it was different, but I loved the European style. I thought it was great. I had a ton of fun over there.
moving on just a little bit, you went from written to the EIHL for
Yeah,
2 years, which is England, right?
yeah, the UK.
What prompted that change?
Um, I was looking for a bit of a change. Like, I loved Italy. I could have easily played there forever. Like, I had the best organization in the world in Italy. They were incredible. Loved every second of it. Loved everything about the culture, everything about the guys I was playing with. Won a couple championships there. But I wanted to kind of progress and see where I was going to end up, right? The goal for me at the beginning was to end up in Germany or Finland or Sweden or one of those top tier leagues. I wanted to get there. Um, my son was born in Italy my last year, and he had some congenital heart defects when he was born there, and it was a difficult thing with the language barrier. So that was the reason why we ended up in the UK. Like, I was hoping to go to Austria or Germany, and kind of see where it went from there. And we just weren't sure what it was going to be like with healthcare and the language barrier and all that stuff. But we actually considered retirement. And then the coach called from Milton Keynes and thought, hey, they speak good English there. They got a good enough healthcare system. I think we can make that work. And then, yeah, I mean, everything worked out pretty well. I was happy to play in that league too. It was a good league.
Was it very different, or because that league's been kind of up and coming each year?
Yeah,
It's getting like stronger and stronger and stronger, right?
yeah,
In 2018 to 2020, I think you're hitting the high point of that development process.
yeah, yeah. I think it took a hit with COVID for sure.
Yeah,
Like, I think there's such a big amount of people that retired um, right when that happened, and they were unsure about um, getting. It was harder to get guys over at that point in time. So you saw a lot more younger imports going the last couple of years. It's still a great league, but those 2 years I was there, I felt like it was great. As far as the caliber of hockey, it was like some of those top end teams had 2,000 NHL games on their roster, more like guys that played in the NHL the year before and first round picks, and guys that had 1,500 NHL games on some teams. Like, it was good hockey. I enjoyed it. There were certain things about that league that did bother me. Like, imagine playing pro hockey with those pegs that you just jam in the ice. They don't drill them in. Yeah, but not every
that's
rink.
tough.
Just
That's
two or
tough.
three rinks, but both rinks that I played in as like in Milton Keynes and Glasgow, they couldn't drill into the ice. I had so many delay of game penalties from knocking the net off. Like, you couldn't use the RVH. Like, you had to completely play the game a different way because you'd knock the net
Yeah.
off every time. So stuff like that just drove me nuts. But outside of that, like, you kind of take the good with the bad. It was more a good experience than a bad one. There's certain things that I wish they would do differently. There's not a lot of protection there. Like, there's, I think, 11 teams in that league when I played there, and I think there was 9 or 10 goalies cut both years, like each year.
Wow.
Not total, like, but some teams would go through 4 or 5 goalies, and some teams would go through maybe 2 or 3 and whatever. But you had no real protection. Like, if you didn't play well, it was 2 weeks of pay and a flight home, and that's all it was. Whereas, in Germany, you're getting bought out of that contract or whatever, 80% of it, and then you can go sign somewhere else. But you didn't have that in the UK, which I thought was kind of bad. Obviously, like, you're bringing your whole
Yeah.
family over there, a lot of those guys, and especially in goaltending, like, you want to be in a situation where you can get cut and sent home, 2 weeks pay, see you later. So there were certain things that I think they could do better, but overall, it was a good experience, for sure.
What is it like going to places like that and walking into a hockey rink? Like, this just off the cuff, and I don't know why I thought of it, but if you're downtown London, like, what does a hockey rink look like in London?
Yeah, so I actually played in Milton Keynes, which was, I think, the closest team to London, or one of the closest. We were only like 45 minutes to an hour. It was kind of a suburb of London. They had a train that went directly to London every morning. So a lot of people that lived in or worked in London lived in Milton Keynes. Um, our rink would be pretty similar to like a junior B or junior A rink in Canada. Like, it wasn't the seats went all the way around, but they didn't go all the way down to ice level. Probably sat 2,500 people if you really jammed them in there. We were getting, I think we had the lowest attendance in the league, or one of them. We're averaging just over 1,000 people. But the fans we got were incredible. It was one of the best atmospheres I actually played in Milton Keynes. They had the Barmy Army going, and they were loud, and drums and everything. I loved it. But it's kind of funny. You go to, I think, Dundee, the rink's like 100 and something years old, and it's cold. It's a great place to play because it's like, oh, this is really cool, and they get some great fans. It's a fun atmosphere. But you could play there on Friday and then go to Glasgow on Saturday, and you're playing in this brand new rink in a shopping center right outside of Glasgow in front of 4,000 people. And you go to Belfast on a Sunday, and their rink's basically like the American League. Like, they had a beautiful 15,000 people rink in Belfast, right downtown on the water. And they'd get, 8 to 10,000 on a Saturday night. It was just funny. You never knew what you're going to walk into that night, whether you're in Manchester or Belfast or Coventry. It was always different. It was always a good atmosphere, and the fans they got were super passionate. But yeah, you got some rinks where it was maybe tougher than others to do your warm up, a little bit colder, a little bit different for sure.
You felt the bones aching, eh?
Oh, for sure, absolutely.
How's the transition been from being an athlete into being a coach?
It's been good. I actually kind of fell into coaching. Like, it was just such a blur the way it happened. Like, I think we played on Saturday, my last year playing, and like COVID was a thing, obviously, and we had known it was going to affect something, but we weren't sure what the details were. So we had played like a Saturday night, and then I think we went to the rink on Monday for practice, and our whole season was canceled halfway through practice. And then it was like 3 days later on a plane home back to Canada. I think every player in Scotland was on the same plane. Must have been 15 of us Canadian and American guys on the same plane because we were flying through Toronto, and right into quarantine for 6 months or whatever it was, lockdown. Basically, we were just trying to find a way, my wife and I, like, she was working remotely, so she was able to do a little bit of her stuff online, which was good. But like, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, right? So we were trying to figure out a way to kind of get those next steps. We had a 3-year-old. We're trying to buy a house or whatever, all that stuff. Tough time to do it. And I ended up working where I am now in a full-time job, but it was shift work. And I didn't want to do that forever. Shift work was tough. I work an hour away from home. It wasn't going to last. And I ended up getting asked to help out for a coach that my brother used to play for with AAA hockey. And it was just supposed to be his team. And then it turned out to be the whole organization. Did 4 teams last year. And I loved it. It was so great, especially the development side. That's where I like it, where you're working with the same goalies throughout the year and you're working through their problems with them. You're chatting with them. So much more than just edge work and goalie drills. You're talking about how they're doing at school and how they're feeling with their game and working through those things. So I loved it. And then I thought, well, I might as well just transition this into the summer as well. Like, if it's something I'm enjoying, why not make a little business out of it? So that's what I did. And so far it's been good. It's, as you know, certainly lots of challenges that come with it when you're doing everything, but I've enjoyed it. It's been a great experience. Tons of personal growth and new skills that I'm learning and dealing with people. But I'm lucky. The goalies I work with are fantastic, and it's been a good little transition.
Is it surprising when you think back to when you're some of their age, just the difference in either how they acted or how you think, maybe just how you thought you acted compared to what's going on now?
Yeah. It is funny to kind of tie it back to how you were at the same age and
Yeah.
kind of the things you were going through, and it's hard not to, like, even how recently I had played, getting into coaching, I just have such a hard time still putting myself in their shoes, right? Like, and that used to drive me nuts as a goalie when I would talk with goalie coaches, but like, tell you this is what you should have done. Like, oh, well, this is why I saw it this way. And now I kind of have to catch myself doing it the same way, where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, like, you're the one driving the bus. You're the one making the saves. It's a lot easier to watch a game and tell a guy what to do than it is to be in that moment, second to second making decisions and and then just trying to give yourself the best chance to save the puck, right? So that's something that I've been working on personally. But like I said, the goalies I've been lucky enough to work with so far have been very, I don't want to say surprising, but I had not worked with kids at that age in a long time. Like I've done lots of coaching up until now, but it was always kind of in small doses, helping out at camps and helping
Yeah.
out practice, that type of stuff. So to be out there one-on-one and come up with the drills and stuff, I just was really surprised with how much effort they want to put into it to get better. And it's not necessarily everyone, but a lot of these goalies, I had goalies asking me to do edge work and stuff like that. Like that was fantastic. Like, yeah, sure, we can do edge work today. Like no pucks, just 20 minutes, just get better. But like where I am, the attitudes they have towards the game are great. And if I can kind of help them sharpen a few things or look at things a little more objectively or through a different lens, then I'm happy as a coach.
That's awesome. I think it's the hardest thing transferring or transitioning from the player to the coach mentality is taking the step back, and you now have to be able to describe something
Yeah,
like 13 different ways,
absolutely. Yeah.
and then be okay if that athlete doesn't like it. You just put it on the shelf and you're like, okay, we'll revisit it another day.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. And I mean, you know as well as I do how nuanced the position is, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't
There's
know if
no
there's no
there's
right or
no
wrong.
right or wrong way
Yeah.
of stopping a puck, right?
Yeah.
It's just easy and hard. And based on who you are as an athlete determines what's easy and what's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. Like you got to give them the freedom to figure it out, what works best for them. And that's tough as a coach because, you want it done a certain way. And maybe that doesn't work with one goalie, but it works perfect with another. Um, you're constantly adapting, trying to figure out the best way you can cater to each goalie as an individual to make them better or the best version of themselves or whatever it is. But it's just so much more when you look at, like I always consider it, there's like a big piece of being a good cohesive goaltending, and we can only touch on some of it on the ice when we're working with goalies, right? Like sure, if you're have better feet and you have better edge work, you're going to be a better goalie, right? That's just absolutely no doubt. But you could have the best edge work in the world, but your hand-eye coordination sucks. You're not going to be a great goalie. Or if you have those two things in spades, your edge work's fantastic, your hand-eye coordination's amazing, but you don't have the endurance to play a 60-minute game, or you're inconsistent, or you don't have the mental toughness to play big when it matters. There's just so much that goes into it. It's such a simple position when you talk about the fact that we have one job, keep the puck out of the net, but somehow just gets so complicated when you kind of dissect that to see how many different things go into being a good goalie and like a cohesive package, especially when it's a razor thin margin between goalie A and goalie B and goalie C. Like an NHL goalie to an American League goalie is very, very little difference, right? So challenging the coach.
Absolutely. And that reminded me of something, I believe it was Ian Clark. Let me see if I can pull it up real fast. He has like there's 7 areas of goaltending that you need to master. Do you follow In Goal?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So they had like a big goalie, what was it called? Goalie Palooza. Like all the big brands come, all the big goalie coaches go, and it's like a demo day for any of the gear that you want to do.
Oh, cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how they worked in Vancouver because it was going on when we were in Calgary.
Okay.
And In Goal Magazine podcast had a live show going on, a live recording, and they ended up putting that on their subscription platform, which is only $50 a year.
Okay.
Which is nuts. But it was Ian Clark broke down his 7 principles of goaltending. And that's
Okay.
what that reminded me of. And I think it was the most accurate description of what you need as a goalie. Like it was
Yeah.
generalized, but it was the most accurate.
Yeah.
So I would urge people to go find that and listen to it.
Yeah. I'll track that down for sure. That sounds great.
But just wrapping up here, if you could go back going into your first year of pro hockey, what's a piece of advice that you would tell yourself? Not change anything, just give yourself a little bit of advice.
Oh, that's a great question. That's a tough one. Um, like I guess it's tough to say without making any changes. So I wouldn't change it, but I would I would have put more focus on the outside approach of like the mental side of the game, if that makes sense. I would have tried to put together a more cohesive off ice routine that was simpler. I was
Okay.
so intense, like, and that was something I learned, and I just burnt out. Like I was drinking a pot of coffee, pacing my bedroom, thinking about making saves, from 8 a.m. until morning skate. And when I got home, same thing. And that's not sustainable at all. So finding a way to do it, which I was lucky enough to be able to do for the last bit of my career, but just find a way to enjoy it and look at it objectively and realize what you have to do out there and find a better way to do it, right? Like there's so many ways to approach the game, and I've played with a lot of really good goalies and heard of a lot of really good goalies, and they all have different routines. They all like to have a different type of level for their high performance zone, or whatever you want to call it, that sweet spot where you're going to play well.
Mhm.
And I think it would have been good for me to find that sweet spot earlier and find how it worked. Because like I said, my sweet spot was so intense. Like if I didn't have my heart rate at like 150, like just so stressed out and dialed in and stuff, it would have been a bad game. Whereas when I learned that later on, I was going in super relaxed, like almost aloof, like just
Right.
super chilled out. And that translated into a lot better performances, a lot more consistency. And overall, my enjoyment of the game went up drastically. I loved it. My last 4 years, I would have played forever. Just loved it. And I couldn't always have said that when I was playing earlier, right? Like I loved it, sure, but it was hard at times, right? That's just the nature of goaltending. And lastly, would have been take care of the body a little bit more. Like I'm doing okay for the age I'm at now. I don't doesn't hurt too much to get out of bed. I'm still able to do stuff. But I wish I would have started earlier with like yoga. Right? I started doing that in pieces at the beginning, but not enough. And now I'm 33 and I do it a lot more consistently. And I feel better than I did when I was 20. I feel more flexible and body feels better. So that's actually a big piece of advice that I give the goalies I work with. Like, just take care of yourself. It's such a tough position on the body. And I love yoga. That's my thing. That's what I would tell people to go do for sure. Like, it's such a great tool to have, all the flexibility and strength throughout that entire range of motion, the mental benefits of it, being able to slow yourself down, do your breathing, and then you can kind of translate that into hockey too, right? You let in a bad goal, a couple of deep breaths, move on. Um, yeah, it's a great little way to sharpen yourself off the ice.
It's a little bit of a cheat code, eh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's the best.
Yeah. I had a question, but I instantly forgot it. Oh, when you say outside the box, mental training, what do you mean by that?
Just like the way I meant it was kind of, I was so boxed in on the game.
Like, visualizing every
Oh,
minute detail.
constantly. And I love visualization. I'm a huge
Yeah, yeah,
visualization guy. I try and get goalies aware of it, like positive self-talk, and just even if it's 5-10 minutes, just imagine yourself making a save or two on the car ride there with your parents, when
yeah.
you got your headphones in, you're thinking about the game. Just think about yourself having success that night and stuff. But I was going too far with that. And when my second and third year junior, I was splitting time. I was playing 30 something odd games a year. It was doable. But my last year junior, I think I played like 64 out of 68 games. And I was burnt out for a year after that. Like that was exhausting when I was approaching it the way I was approaching it. And then pro's not much better, right? Like I think I played 30 or 40 games each year pro, but they come in bunches because you're splitting time with another guy on an NHL contract. And when he gets called up for a month, you're playing every game that month. You might play 18 games in February, in 28 days in 18 different places. So you got to find a way to make it sustainable. And I wish I had known that earlier, to just take a step back and enjoy it while you're there and just relax. Like go and do your job. It's not a complicated job. Enjoy it when you can,
Yeah. The guys I was always jealous of in juniors and college and pro, really just my whole life, are the guys that were able to kind of leave it at the rink. They were able to
Yeah.
like check out and check back in,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
right? Like that was a skill I didn't get until my last couple years. And
Yeah.
once you get that, it's automatic.
Oh yeah, you're laughing at that point. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
huge. I always love how much of these skills that we learn as goalies translate into real life.
Yes.
That's one of the things that I'm grateful for. It's not, when you're playing in your basement growing up, you want to play in the NHL, right? Or you want to, you're imagining yourself. I used to imagine myself saving, someone on a slap shot in overtime with a second left to win the Stanley Cup or win the gold medal, and like that's the goal, and that's great. But I think about, I didn't get to that level. I didn't play any NHL games. I would have liked to. I would have loved to, but I didn't. But would that mean my career is a failure based on the parameters I set before? Like, no, I'm happy with it. And it's not just the career I had in hockey, but it's what it afforded me to learn off the ice, right? Like, especially as a goalie, the stuff that you're learning, like you just said, being able to compartmentalize everything and leave it at the rink, your all these skills, your breathing techniques, the way you calm yourself down, the way you deal with pressure, like the way you're able to work as a team and all that stuff, like that's invaluable when you move on. And 99.99% of us that start the game, we're gonna live in the real world at some point. We're not gonna play hockey for a living forever, right? And these skills are huge. They're huge skills to have, and it's something I like to talk to my goalies about. Is like, you're prepping for hockey and you want to be the best hockey player you can be, but there's a lot of life to live when you walk away from the sport. And what are you going to be able to look back on and say, like, this is what it offered me? Did I enjoy it while I was doing it? What did I learn from it? And this experience is as great as it can be. A lot of guys look past that stuff, and when it's all said and done, like, well, what did you do? What did you get from it? It's fun stuff.
It is fun stuff. Anyways, thank you for coming on. Do you want to shout out like your social medias or anything like that?
Oh man, I got like 43 followers on my goalie school Instagram that I launched last week. So if you want to follow me at Killeen Goaltending on Instagram, feel free. I won't hold it against you if you don't, but I put some content up there every now and then too. I'm not a big social media guy, but I know it's a necessary evil. And yeah, Killeen Goaltending if you're in the Ottawa area looking for a good little session. And yeah, no, thanks a lot for having me. This was great. Really cool.
It was a lot of fun.